watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Friday Night with me, Matt Goodwin, on GB News, The People's Channel, where I speak up for you, the forgotten majority. Coming up on tonight's show. I tried to talk truth to power last night on BBC Question Time, but it seemed nobody wanted to talk about the uncomfortable truths facing our nation. I'm going to be telling you exactly what I think in just 1 minute. Plus, Labour have abandoned their welfare cuts after admitting that it would not save them any money. But how will this decision affect our tanking economy? I'm going to be debating that tonight with two experts. The Ministry of Justice figures have revealed that 38,000 criminals have now been released onto our streets under the Labour government's soft justice scheme. And in our final section, Matt in Conversation, I'm going to be talking to a top expert, Andrew Gilligan, really sharp guy, on what is happening in East London and why it offers a terrifying glimpse into the future of our country. It's truly shocking. You don't want to miss it. It's Friday Night with Matt Goodwin. Starts right now. Now, I'll also be joined tonight by my top panel, acting deputy comment editor at The Telegraph, Poppy Coburn, and political commentator Kai Wilshaw. As ever, let me know your views tonight. gbnews.com/you'll say, and of course you can reach us on X at GB News. But now it's time for the news with Katie Bowen.
Matt, thank you and good evening. The headlines at 1 minute past 8. A new poll has found that the public overwhelmingly backed the King's decision to strip Andrew of his Prince title. As Buckingham Palace announced, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has been struck from the official roll of the peerage. Buckingham Palace says his name has been struck from the roll after the King took the decision to formally strip his brother of his Prince and Duke of York titles and HRH style, a move that effectively ends his public life. 79% of Brits say that King Charles made the right call, while 58% of those polled feel the royal family moved too slowly in dealing with the controversy. Andrew will be evicted from Royal Lodge, although palace sources suggest he won't move immediately because of the lengthy process of giving up his home. It comes as Buckingham Palace moves to contain the scandal over Andrew's ties to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Elsewhere today, Sir Keir Starmer has told Rachel Reeves she faces no further action over her inadvertent failure to obtain a rental licence for her South London family home. The Chancellor previously admitted to mistakenly breaching local council housing rules by failing to secure a selective licence for the property when it was rented out following her move to Downing Street. She initially said she was unaware of the requirement, but emails between her husband and the letting agency published yesterday showed he'd been informed about the need for a licence. But estate agents Harvey and Wheeler took the blame for the oversight in not applying for a licence on her behalf, despite having agreed to do so. A double murderer who stabbed his pregnant girlfriend 23 times after being released from prison on licence has been jailed for at least 42 years. 32-year-old Alana Odysseus was murdered by 47-year-old Shane March at her home in Walthamstow, East London, in July last year. March admitted her murder on the 7th day of his trial after an expert no longer supported his claim of diminished responsibility. Jurors in his trial were not told that March had been convicted of murder before. And 3 Just Stop Oil activists who sprayed Stonehenge with orange powder have been cleared following a trial. 74-year-old Rajan Naidu, 23-year-old student Neve Lynch and 36-year-old Luke Watson took part in the protest a day before last year's summer solstice. The 3 climate activists were found not guilty of criminal damage after citing human rights law in their defence during a 10-day trial at Salisbury Crown Court. Those are your latest GB News headlines. Now let's go back to Matt.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Friday Night with Matt Goodwin. Another shocking case was brought to our attention this week as we learned that an Afghan migrant was found guilty of raping a Scottish teen during the early hours in a park. 21-year-old Rapula Ahmadzai approached a 17-year-old girl sitting on a park bench in Elgin, Murray, asking if she had a boyfriend. When she responded that she didn't, he told her that he would be her boyfriend now and then proceeded to rape her. Just another case of horrific violence against British women that seems to be getting more common by the day. I don't know about you, but I seem to be reading about these cases on an almost daily basis. It was, of course, just last week that we were talking about an asylum seeker from Sudan found guilty of murdering Rhiannon White, a young mother who will never see her son grow up after suffering roughly 20 stab wounds. Now, I tried to talk yesterday about what is going on in Britain in a pretty fiery debate on BBC Question Time, which was held in that beacon of diversity, Bradford. Watch this.
On the current trends, by the next general election, on the current trends, we will have another 181,000 illegal migrants coming into this country over the next few years. You say they don't commit crime, violence, etc. What do you say to the family of Rhiannon White, the young mother who was murdered by a man from Sudan? What do you say to the family of the 8-year-old in Lambeth who was raped by an asylum seeker, or the 12-year-old in Nuneaton who was raped by an asylum seeker, or the 10-year-old in Stockport? But this is the narrative that we have, and if we talk about it, we're far right. If we talk about it, we're racist.
Well, I suspect you feel, as I do, very frustrated, very angry with the state of the country and what's happening. And it isn't just here. It's happening across Europe, all over the place. A shocking case you probably haven't heard about recently happened in France, where an Algerian woman raped a 12-year-old girl before murdering her. And the details, to be frank, are too graphic to disclose before the watershed, and I'm just not going to share them. The 27-year-old woman who took the young girl's life was under orders to leave France after failing to renew a student visa. But nobody in Britain in traditional media is even talking about that case, even though much of France has been. And of course, while I was in Bradford, I also wanted to get across the key point, which is about the national inquiry into the rape gangs, or indeed the lack of it. Check this out.
Why has it taken the Labour government so long to give us a national inquiry into the truth of the rape gang scandal, the mass abuse of white working-class girls by Pakistani Muslim men?
Hang on a minute, Matt. We are talking about the decision by the King to strip Andrew of his
We're speaking in Bradford. Bradford refused to hold a local inquiry into the rape gangs.
Well, indeed, of course, Bradford politicians did do everything they could to avoid holding a local inquiry into the rape gang scandal. And so I just wanted to remind the local people of Bradford what indeed has been going on in their city. We need that national inquiry, and we need it now. Now, why is it that they don't want to talk about violence against women? Nobody in Question Time wanted to talk about this, only me, apparently. All they want to do time and time again is sweep all of this under the carpet. Of course, much like they swept the rape gang scandal under the carpet for decades. They're just repeating the same mistake. And if you talk about it, you're far right. If you talk about it, you're Islamophobic, you're Nazi, etc., etc. But they're ignoring the evidence, they're ignoring what's happening in this country, and they're gaslighting the rest of this country. And I'm going to keep talking about it, as always. Well, joining us now to discuss it is the CEO of Freedom from Abuse, Marilyn Hawes. Marilyn, can I just ask you, why even now, years after we've known about the grooming scandal, we're learning about all of these horrific cases in the newspapers on an almost daily basis now, it seems to me, why is it that now Westminster still has this inbuilt refusal, this tendency to downplay this issue of violence and abuse that is being meted out against British women and girls from people who shouldn't be in our country to begin with?
Can I first congratulate you on surviving Fiona Bruce last night, because frankly I wanted to slap her.
I don't advocate violence myself, Marilyn. I just want to intervene there. But I did have a very stiff drink after the show.
What irritates me, BBC are woke, aren't they? And what you were trying to get across last night was about it it was a certain type of migrant that comes in here, not ones from Ukraine and genuine people that are seeking to come to this country, but we are talking about feral people. These gangs are actually also, they're bringing in, they are paying for certain ethnicities to come in and join the rape gangs. Now, it is absolutely horrendous. And if I can just, on one side of this for a moment, do contact me about what's going on in Hillingdon, because it is an outrage about the illegal immigrants. And I don't care what anybody says. If you come in here without your paperwork, you are illegal. I couldn't go to France without my paperwork. So if you come in here illegally, you're illegal. But
I noticed that briefly, Marilyn, last night on the show, where a number of the other panellists used this new word of irregular migration. And I did pull them up a couple of times because this is an attempt, of course, to actually minimise, dilute, downplay what we're dealing with, which is illegal migration.
Exactly. They're minimising it, and they're also minimising what's happened to these women, then girls, who have been raped on an industrial scale. I mean, any child sexual abuse is horrific. I deal with it every day of my life, and I'm trying to help and get help for people who have suffered this. But we are talking about, and it's still happening. Don't think it's gone away. It's still happening as we speak. So it's all very well for Keir Starmer to, and he so eloquently said, I think I read on one report where he actually said, and I quote, we don't want to use the judges because it would require all ongoing proceedings to finish, because that would obviously interrupt and corrupt the investigation. And, because if they're in court, we can't talk about those people because it's a live case. Well, you can go on forever saying that because it is still going on. So
indeed, we've also seen those reports, Marilyn, of course, in London from charity workers, social workers, former police officers who are saying in the mainstream press now regularly that since 2006, one former detective said he knew of at least 50 cases in the capital city, yet today Sadiq Khan, the London mayor, the Labour London mayor, is routinely trying to downplay the issue. Now, of course, Marilyn, the BBC would say that they are a neutral organisation. They would say they're not woke. They would say that they are balanced and they're giving room to both perspectives, both sides of the debate. But there has been in legacy media, has there not, an instinctive tendency to focus on crimes when they involve the children, women, girls from minority communities, while glossing, downplaying crimes involving women and girls from particularly the white working class.
Sadiq Khan needs to be, well, he won't resign because he's arrogant. And he's also a great friend of our great leader, Keir Starmer. They're both useless. They should both go. The whole lot should go, quite frankly. And I think he's a little weasel myself. I really have got no respect for him whatsoever. And I mean, I have known, I've done my job for 23 years. I have known for over 20 years what's been going on across the country and in London. If I know it and you're telling me he doesn't know it, and he's close to Sir Mark Rowley, it's absolutely rubbish. I mean,
well, just hold that thought, Marilyn, because we want to thank you. I just want to bring in tonight's panel and get their view on this. We've got acting deputy comment editor at the Daily Telegraph, Poppy Coburn, political commentator Kai Wilshaw. Poppy, the argument there that this is still endemic, this is still this is rife, this is happening right now across the country. Yeah, I have to say, I mean, I'm just sharing a personal view here. Going into, say, a BBC Question Time audience and a panel, I was struck at the dominant view there was to essentially downplay this, minimise it in Bradford, a city that, of course, has rejected a local inquiry into this issue, even though the local Conservative MP, Robbie Moore, said he suspects that you're probably looking at a Rotherham-style level of abuse in Bradford, but still legacy media saying, don't talk about it, don't talk about it.
Well, it's remarkable because it's not just that they're not talking about it, it's the double standard here. You know, I've spoken about before in your show, there were loads of prominent feminists, including some MPs, who came forward to say there is no link between immigration and crimes against women, which is just frankly untrue. I mean, this is actually backed up by, like, real data. dictator here. You can say that there are other good things about immigration that you like, but there is clearly a link between certain groups that come to the UK, particularly those who enter illegally or irregularly, as they're now being called, and committing serious crime. What I found so frustrating about watching you last night, Matt, is when you finally started to bring up what had been happening in that town, in Bradford, this industrial abuse of young girls. And when the first thing you say, when you get cut off by Fiona Bruce, it's when you're mentioning the ethnicity of perpetrators. And suddenly that's the moment where you have to be shut down and we can no longer have this conversation. This is why we need a national inquiry. This is precisely the attitude that we need to root out from a national inquiry.
I mean, Kai, I was struck. We're having a conversation about Andrew, no longer Prince Andrew, of course, but we're talking about the importance of survivors. We're talking about the importance of people's lived experiences and the victims. Yet it seems that that conversation is much easier for, let's say, the mainstream to have, because it's about truth to power, it's about the royal family. But the conversation about grooming, the conversation about a very different power dynamic, where it is people from a minority community abusing members of the majority community, people don't want to know about it.
No, Matt, you and I both know that's nonsense, right? If I started to talk about the scandal of candy shops on Oxford Street right now in this item on your show, you'd be equally frustrated as Fiona Bruce was.
If there was a link to what we're actually debating...
But Matt, you'd been making that point throughout the evening. And what I would say about last night is... And I agree with you that there are regular Brits all across this country who raise concerns about immigration, and that's completely fair of them to do. But I think what they saw through you, Matt, last night, and what they see is a very singular focus on the ethnicity of perpetrators, while ignoring, conveniently, other sexual abuses that take place. And I think they suspect you and suspect your motivations, because where was your advocacy for women and survivors of sexual abuse?
Hang on.
Any time before this grooming gang scandal?
Kai, if I could just bring that in. You mentioned a singular focus on the immigration angle here.
Yes.
That is something that is actually reflected in public opinion. You know, I know it feels sometimes we're talking about immigration endlessly, but that's because it's the #1 polling issue for a significant chunk of the country. What I find frustrating is when I listen to feminists who've spent the last 10 years telling me that every single man that wolf whistles you in the street is a rapist in waiting, when there are actual cases of serious sexual abuse, suddenly bury their heads in the sand. And I understand that the right gets a lot of flack because they're seen as being, you know, just jumping on this issue because it's politically convenient. But can we not say that about people like Jess Phillips too?
Can I just say one other thing? Can I ask? Let's just flip this around a minute. Here's why I raise that issue. This is my personal take on this. We're in Bradford. We're in a city that has rejected a local inquiry into the rape gangs, and we're in that city a week after the Labour government has lost the confidence of a number of rape gang victims who have said publicly they don't have confidence in Jess Phillips, they don't have confidence in Keir Starmer. The very next week, we're in Bradford. And yet the prime-time flagship television political debate show on the BBC decides that it doesn't want to include a discussion about that issue in Bradford. That's what I found incredibly odd. So I decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to force this issue onto the agenda. Now, the only way you could do that is in a conversation about the rights of survivors of sexual abuse. Now, why is it that we can have that conversation regarding Andrew, but we can't have this conversation regarding who happened to be represented that evening, the local Pakistani Muslim community?
No, and you had raised issues of immigration in the show. Those had been brought up, but it's not the singular focus of that show. Now, I think you had your piece, and what I actually said, I was doing a similar show in Welsh that night, and I said, look, we can't be on the left. We are guilty of shutting down debate on this issue. We need to find a way of having a real honest conversation and not call people racist. I said that. I believe that.
Well, there we go. Hopefully Lisa and Andy will learn that lesson. Let's see. Up next, Labour have abandoned their welfare cuts after admitting that they would not save any money. But how will this decision affect our tanking economy? Because the numbers here are absolutely bananas, and we're going to be debating welfare cuts, where we're going next with the welfare state, with two experts, one on the left, one on the right. I'll see you in a minute.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
We have a very interesting guy in the studio called Will Whitehorn, who's a space expert. And the reason we've got Will in is that NASA have plans to send astronauts to live on the moon. And
it's not how you think, though, is it? It's inside glass bubbles that are going to be made from lunar dust.
OK.
Not in houses.
The American Space Agency is funding research to see if it is possible. And let's get Will, who does believe it's possible. And will you be going, Will?
Well, not to the moon, obviously.
No.
That's going to be a bit expensive. But and I think NASA will be sending astronauts who probably had to train for several years. But I do intend to go to space in the next couple of years, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So how's it going to work? So NASA's unveiling this plan to send astronauts to live on the moon, living in glass bubbles.
Yeah, made of basically moon dust. So there's a huge amount of silica and other similar materials on the moon. And basically using a microwave process, like a microwave oven, of a very sophisticated type, they're going to be able to meld those and construct, and also using 3D, technology, they'll also be able to construct the interiors on the moon. Now, that's because rocketry is expensive, so it's very expensive to take them up.
So it's not that you fill a big space container and bring it to the moon full of this stuff and then assemble it there. You're actually going to fabricate it, make it on the lunar surface.
That's one of NASA's plans. So the first mission going back shortly, in which Elon Musk will be involved with the new Starship rocket that you've probably seen. The Starship is the biggest rocket ever built in human history. And that's going to be able to also go to Mars. But it's also going to be able to carry industrial material to space.
Right.
GB News, the People's Channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Friday Night with me, Matt Goodwin, on GB News, the People's Channel. Now, the Labour Party is facing fresh accusations of abandoning welfare reform after admitting its flagship review of disability benefits is going to save no money. Official papers show the so-called Timms review into personal independence payments, or PIPs, won't cut costs, but simply makes the system fair and fit. Well, critics say it proves that Labour's giving up on reform as the PIP bill soars towards £30 billion a year by the end of the decade. Now, the former chief of the Institute for Fiscal Studies, Paul Johnson, he says that taxpayers are going to end up footing the bill. It's an enormous bill to cover people who are not in work, while economists say Rachel Reeves, she may need £40 billion in tax rises or cuts to balance the books. So we need to really get to the core of this issue. We've also seen, of course, recent policy proposals from the Reform Party saying that they want to cut welfare. Well, joining me to discuss this is former Labour advisor Paul Richards and former Conservative MP Daniel Kaczynski. Daniel, can I start with you, please? The numbers on welfare, when I look at these numbers, they're insane to me, the amount of money that we are now spending as a country on the welfare state, including about £3.5 billion a year on people with mild mental health conditions, such as ADHD, anxiety, depression. And those numbers are also forecast to go up considerably. What on earth is going on, and how do we bring these numbers down?
Well, I think the problem that the Labour government is facing is very similar to the one that we faced when we were in office, which is that the colossal amount of money that we had to borrow during the pandemic, £600 billion, has contributed to the overall debt. We are now 2.8 trillion in debt, with debt interest payments this year of 120 billion. And for your viewers who don't know what 120 billion is. It's the same that we spend on the entire defence budget and education budgets combined. And so if this Labour government is not prepared to make radical changes to welfare spending, we are hurtling towards the sort of bankruptcy that France is facing, staring in the face, and all the consequences of social tension and division and political gridlock that ensue if you're running towards bankruptcy.
And just to be clear, the numbers that you've mentioned, 111 to 120 billion pounds, that is just on us. That's just servicing the interest on our debt. That's before you get to the debt itself. Yes. That's like just paying off your credit card or having an interest-only mortgage. You're not actually dealing with the underlying debt.
And this is the fascinating thing, because I think in my lifetime, I speak to you as a 53-year-old. I suspect I'm a little bit older than you are. In the last 53 years, if you look at all the Conservative governments and the Labour governments, the Conservative governments in peacetime have radically every year tried to reduce the deficit. They call it austerity. We call it living within your means. The interesting thing about Labour governments is they borrow massively in peacetime as well as in crisis, and they're not prepared to make the changes that are required in peacetime, because we are at the moment in peacetime.
Yeah. Paul Richards has often said the difference between the left and the right is the left think it's compassionate to have as many people as possible on welfare, and the right think it's compassionate to have as many people living their lives so they don't have to rely on welfare. But there is this big ideological divide opening up, and the numbers, as Daniel says, the numbers are very, very scary.
I mean, Daniel is absolutely right to identify the eye-watering nature of the problem we face. The Labour government did attempt to reform the system, you'll recall, a few months ago, and its own backbenchers decided now was not the right time for that. So there is a desire at the heart of government to do something about it. I would disagree with a couple of things. One is I don't think the desire for reform has been eradicated from the heart of ministers. I think they do want to see reforms. And so the Timms review is not about giving up on that. I think it's just as a staging point. But the most important point of all, which we haven't drawn out yet, is that we have to get the country back to work. And so you do, when you sort of dismiss the idea of being, fair and fit, I think, well, actually, if that means we use the system to get people into work, where if they have got anxiety or ADHD or other forms of mental illness and so on, they're in an environment where they can work in a supported way. Now, that means they get better, because we know
one specific question, though.
Yes, of course.
Do you think, in the worst cost of living crisis for decades, it is acceptable or right that the people watching this show are having to pay £3.5 billion a year to support people with very mild mental health conditions like anxiety?
How do you know the people
ADHD?
Watching this aren't those people as well? You can't
but as
possibly.
A country, can we justify £3.5 billion a year?
When we're talking about these people, every statistic behind it is a real person. Some of whom are watching this who feel they can't go to work for whatever reason, and we need to help them. Not dismiss them.
Daniel,
because it saves money. And you mentioned austerity, Daniel. The cost of austerity far outweighed whatever short-term savings you made, increasing crime, unemployment, and all the rest of it.
Wow.
So, short-term cuts, the Tories, as ever, know the price of everything and the value of nothing.
It saddens me greatly that the country of my birth, what I find fascinating, Poland, destroyed during the Second World War, totally wiped out. And then, of course, we had communism, which was a politically Orwellian and economically illiterate system. Poland is on course, despite being mothballed behind the Iron Curtain, Poland is on course to overtake us as an economy within the next 10 years. I find that staggering. I find it deeply disconcerting, because it will have a major impact on the defence of our continent. We won't be able to defend Europe because we can't afford the defence capability that countries like Poland can. Polish welfare payments are a fraction of what they are in this country, and that allows their government to have lower taxes, which then make their businesses more competitive on the global stage. And if we can't compete against the Vietnamese and the Chinese and the Japanese, we're hurtling towards bankruptcy.
I don't disagree with anything you've just said. We do want the welfare bill to come down. The question surely is, how do you do it? Now, you either do it by just cutting it and putting people into poverty, which, as I've said, ends up costing more in the long run, or you do it in ways that the Timms review is attempting to do, which is to find ways to get people back into work at whatever level they can cope with, so that they get better better and they
one
are
of the proposals that Reform made this week is they said, look, we're not even having face-to-face consultations.
Well,
why don't we actually look much more seriously at whether people even need this support? Ever since COVID, we've not gone back to face-to-face, in-person consultations.
Well, I think the Timms review will have to look at that kind of thing, both the access to the system, who's getting the money, you know, is it going in the right way? I'm a little sceptical of anything Reform UK says after the disasters in Kent when they're actually in charge of something it's not gone well. But if they've got a good idea, let's put it into the review and have a look.
Well, it's early days, Paul.
I'm obviously, this is the point where we start to disagree. I'm reading now, for the second time, Margaret Thatcher's book on the occasion of the 100th anniversary of her birth, reading that book again for the first time in 20 years. I mean, this is the only politician in my lifetime that not only balanced the books, but actually started to pay off Britain's debts.
But she had the North Sea oil, Daniel. The North Sea oil was a one-off payment.
The Labour government are now closing off entirely.
But it's gone.
But anyway,
you can't spend it twice.
There are new oil fields coming all the way down the line. But what I'm trying to say is, she was vilified and she was hated because she was prepared to make those very, very difficult decisions in order to balance the budget. That's not something that Keir Starmer is prepared to do.
She had 3 million unemployed people claiming the dole not working. She put mining communities out of business, and she had the North Sea oil as a one-off moment that she squandered. Now, other countries like Norway put it into a sovereign wealth fund and have been benefiting ever since. Thatcher just up the wall.
There's a difference of opinion there.
Looking at where we're going, though, Daniel, if we don't get control of these numbers, are we looking at a 1976-style fiscal crisis intervention? I don't see how the numbers can add up over the next couple of years. If we're spending somewhere between £8 and £12 billion a month just on debt interest, we have millions of people working age out of work, not in the economy, not driving it, not contributing. And then at the same time, we're using cheap migrant labour to try and plug that hole. But we know that's now a net fiscal cost from the Office for Budget Responsibility and others. How do we get out of it?
Well, one thing we can be sure of is that these global catastrophes, which have descended on our country with alarming frequency, will continue. So we had the global banking crisis in 2008, 500 billion to bail out the banks. The pandemic, 600 billion to bail out every man, woman and dog in this country and their businesses. Then the emergency over energy after Ukraine was invaded. The next global crisis is, what, 5, 10, 15 years away? At a time when, at that moment, we will have to borrow hundreds of billions. So for them not to reduce spending now is playing on thin ice.
Well, we're going to watch it closely. Coming up next, Ministry of Justice figures, get this, reveal that 38,000 criminals have been released onto our streets under the government's soft justice scheme. I'm going to be talking to somebody who knows more about this issue than anybody else in the country. That is Reform UK's Justice Minister, about our wreck of a prison system which is letting criminals out early. I'll see you in 1 minute.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
A lot of fine weather at the moment across southern Europe, but a couple of exceptions. Showery for Greece and rain for parts of Iberia. A narrow band of rain approaching Madeira, staying away from the Canary Islands, but pushing into Lisbon, where it's a wet day on Saturday, moving across central Spain into the south and middle parts of France. Meanwhile, showers across northern and the far south of Italy, in between some sunshine. Showers also for Greece, but the Greek islands looking reasonable next few days.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello there, good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. The showers are set to continue over the weekend, but plenty of decent sunny spells in between, though it is going to remain rather breezy. And it's all thanks to low pressure, often situated to the north or northwest of the country, at times dragging in frontal systems, also plenty of isobars on that chart, so it is going to remain quite blustery. Some quite heavy downpours of rain at first across parts of Wales, southwest England. These will push northwards into parts of Scotland, northern England, also parts of East Anglia and southeast England. Some quite heavy downpours associated with these areas of rain, possibly even some hail and thunder and some very blustery winds too, but that does mean it should hold temperatures up, so a fairly mild night. Many towns and cities across the south remaining in the low double digits. Nevertheless, though, as we head towards the weekend, it's going to be a very unsettled start, particularly across Scotland. Heavy showers continuing, these merging into longer spells of rain. Still very blustery to start the day too. Perhaps a little brighter across Northern Ireland, though we can't rule out some showers around coastal areas. But many areas of the west across England and Wales will see these showers continue, perhaps a little brighter across parts of the southeast. Saturday, we will see quite a mix in conditions, but the longer spells of rain will eventually clear Scotland, so it will turn a little brighter, but once again we'll see a mix of showers as well, and still these could be heavy with some hail and thunder, and it's still going to be quite blustery, very blustery in fact around exposed coastal areas. Not feeling quite as mild as this afternoon, highs reaching around 15 degrees Celsius. Now for Sunday, once again, further showers, particularly across the southeast to start the day, and then more and more scooting into parts of Scotland as we progress through into Sunday. But you can see from the chart behind me, there's going to be a bit more sunshine around on Sunday, though once again, can't rule out some showers. Still fairly breezy, and that remains the theme as we head into next week, though things should start to feel that little bit milder.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Friday Night with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, Labour has released more than 38,000 criminals early under its soft justice programme, allowing offenders to serve just 40% of their sentences, otherwise known as Soft Touch Britain. Last month, over 4,300 prisoners were freed, which is the highest monthly total since the scheme began in September 2024. Shockingly, more than 1,000 serious criminals, including those sentenced to 10 years or more, have walked free. You can see them there shaking champagne outside of prison on their release. And there have even been reports today that a man who was released under the scheme has been charged with murder. Well, joining us now is Reform UK's Justice Advisor Vanessa Frake, who has considerable experience of prisons, the criminal justice system. Vanessa, when I read the headline today, 38,000 prisoners being released early, I've got to say it makes me deeply concerned, especially also given what we are also reading in some of the newspapers today regarding what I mentioned, but let's not get into that. It's a live case. What do you think when you see these numbers? 38,000 prisoners essentially coming out early, many serving only 40% of their prison sentence. I mean, it's soft touch Britain, isn't it?
Well, good evening, Matt. Yeah, absolutely. Look, this is nothing new for Labour. If you look back to 2007 to 2010 under Jack Straw, the last Labour government, over 81,000 prisoners were released under then. It was the end of custody licence. And, you know, this is even worse than that. And I think when we look back, we can absolutely say that Labour is very soft on crime. And what's more worrying is that these prisoners are released early, but they're not ready to be released. The probation service is under extreme pressure. And although the government has said that they're going to give them, you know, 700 million more pounds to recruit more probation officers, still the recalls are something like between April of 2025 and June 25, nearly 11,000 prisoners who have been released have been recalled to prison. So actually...
Wow. Sorry, is that just in 1 year, 11,000?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Have been recalled to prison having been released?
Yes, absolutely. It's interesting, though, that they haven't actually released the figures from the early release scheme since last year to now yet. And that will be interesting figures.
Absolutely.
And
Well, I want to get... Sorry, Vanessa, I want to get some quick panel reaction just to what you've been saying, just from Poppy Coburn and Kai Wilshaw, our regular panellists. Kai, 11,000 prisoners being recalled there, Vanessa saying, going back to prison after their release. That's absolutely shocking.
Yeah, it's up from about 9,700 the year before. And the government said when they instituted this early release system that this might be something that happens. But by the way, you know, yes, only serving 40% of their sentences. It's down from serving 50% of their sentences. And this is an emergency measure. Prisons are back at 98% capacity, and that's only by housing prisoners in wards that are a fire risk. So I don't see any other alternative really to that, Matt.
Poppy, quick reaction. What's the solution to this? We can build hospitals in a few weeks during COVID, but we can't seem to solve this prison riddle.
I'm glad you picked this up, Matt, because it's my favourite solution to everything, which is leaving the ECHR. You genuinely can't build Nightingale-style prisons while you're still in the ECHR, because there are very, very stringent restrictions on how you imprison people. There are loads of regulations around it. I completely agree with you, Kai. The Conservative government created this problem, and you're not going to get it fixed in a short period of time. Although, if I were Shabana Mahmood, I know what I'd be saying. Let's leave the ECHR, build loads of prisons quickly, and then we won't have to release these people early.
Well, there you go. Watch your space. I think the next Shabana Mahmood has been identified. Next, in Mad in Conversation, I'm going to be speaking to a top expert, Andrew Gilligan, who's going to be telling us about why East London offers a terrifying glimpse into the future of Britain, drawing on a really shocking story that caught my eye this week. You're not going to believe this. I'll see you in 2 minutes.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back to Friday Night with me, Matt Goodwin, on GB News. Now it's time for Matt in Conversation, where I talk to somebody who I think has been doing really interesting work or has been ahead of the curve. And it's a story that caught my eye this week. I don't know if you saw it, but councillors in Tower Hamlets, that part of London often held up as the success story when it comes to diversity and multiculturalism by the Liberal left. Well, these councillors are facing criticism because they've been campaigning to become MPs in Bangladesh while still holding office in East London, often not turning up to meetings, not serving their local constituents. Sabina Khan, elected for Labour but now with the Aspire party, and independent councillor Ohid Ahmed are among those seeking nominations for February 2026 in Bangladesh. Now, residents say that they're often absent, they're failing to represent local issues. Questions are now being raised about accountability and democracy in Tower Hamlets. And, you know, I think this is part of a growing and worrying trend of sectarianism in British politics, the way in which many minority groups are prioritising issues and campaigns outside of our country over things that really matter to Britain. Well, my next guest really knows a lot about this. Head of Transport and London at the Policy Exchange think tank and former advisor to Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak. I've been a fan of his work for a long time. Andrew Gilligan. Andrew, thank you for joining the show this evening. If I could just get your initial reaction to this story in Tower Hamlets, which of course comes after another story last week with a sort of patrol of young Muslims demonstrating their dominance over the area. And again, it just seems to me we've got this sectarian nightmare emerging in East London.
It's a demonstration of something, like you said, that we've seen several times in the last year or two, that some of our elected representatives, elected to represent us, all of us, are in fact happier representing other places. And don't forget, this isn't the first one of these we've seen. We saw 20 Labour MPs, or 20 MPs, Labour and independent MPs, signed a letter, and many of them attending a press conference in Parliament calling for a new airport to be built in Kashmir, which is obviously, you know, a source of many of the origins of many of the Pakistani British people in this country. But again, it's not the kind of thing that British MPs should be spending their time campaigning on doing. And this takes us one step further. Not only are they campaigning for things to happen in foreign countries, these two councillors are actually standing for election in a foreign country while themselves holding elected office in Britain. And it's not on. Yeah, I know, absolutely. I mean, is this... Am I right in thinking this is essentially the downstream effect of mass immigration, that the more we bring people into this country, the more actually we're going to end up talking about foreign conflicts, policies, governments in other parts of the world? You know, you mentioned MPs in Westminster campaigning for an airport in Pakistan, while many of those MPs coming from a city like Birmingham are clearly not resolving the very real and pressing issues that are facing Birmingham. I talked about the marches in Tower Hamlets, the organisation of what looked to me, I'll be frank, it looked to me like a Muslim militia group. That's what it looked like on the streets. Yet this is the same area that many liberal-minded people in London will say, well, if you want to look at the success story of diversity, go to East London, walk down Brick Lane, spend some time in Tower Hamlets. I'm not convinced that is reflected in reality. Tower Hamlets isn't a particularly successful multicultural place. It is multicultural, but there isn't very much mixing between the races. Other bits of London are better, I might add. A lot of it actually isn't. I mean, obviously, mass immigration is necessary, but not sufficient. I think condition for this to happen. One of the key things that's driving this is the kind of sectarian politics practiced by the Labour Party over the last 20 or so years. Birmingham's a really good example of that. What you've got there is an awful lot of people, Labour politicians and so-called community leaders, who treat people of colour as kind of voter blocks who can be kind of traded en masse. They address them not as individuals, but as members of kind of ethnic or faith blocks. And as a result, we've seen really quite substantial segregation in Birmingham. There's large areas which are almost exclusively monoracial. There are smaller areas like that in other cities, in the north particularly, but they are smaller. Birmingham's a very large.
And arguably that played some role in the recent story too of football fans supporting the Israeli football team Maccabi Tel Aviv, essentially being told that Birmingham was a no-go zone. And to me, that's another symbol of this dark sectarianism. I mean, let's be frank, I think the Labour Party for decades, as you say, has exploited clan-based networks within minority communities to mobilise votes for Labour politicians. I mean, I think that seems to me what's been going on. I'm just going to read to you, though, Andrew. We've got a statement here from Ohid Ahmed, who is one of the councillors campaigning to become an MP in Bangladesh. Now, he tells us tonight, as a long-serving public representative, I take my responsibilities to the council and my constituents extremely seriously. My involvement in Bangladeshi politics is entirely separate from my council duties and conducted in a personal capacity outside of council time. And he goes on, for clarity, I've already confirmed that I will not be seeking re-election next May and will retire from local government after more than 2 decades of continuous service. Well, there we go. Sectarianism is indeed live and well, it seems, in East London. Andrew, what's your reaction to that statement?
So, look, I mean, in a way, it's encouraging. If he's going to go to Bangladesh and be an MP there, that's fine. Off you go, so long as you're not trying to be a councillor in London as well, because you can't do both jobs, clearly, whatever he tries to claim. But I think there's a broader issue here, which is that the Labour Party has ridden this tiger of exploiting racial and faith-based blocks of voting for about 20 years, but it's about to turn around and eat them, because what we're seeing now is the growth of potentially quite worrying Islamo-populist independent MPs. Of course, there are 4 of them were elected in 2024, including in Birmingham. Couple more came very close to unseating quite senior Labour MPs in their constituencies, including West Streeting. So you've seen that, and then in Birmingham
and
as well.
Jess Phillips, we should probably point out. Jess Phillips, who's been very vocal on certain issues.
Jess Phillips, I think, would probably have lost her seat if 2 Islamo-populists, 2 rival Islamo-populists hadn't run for the same thing and split the vote. And equally, Shaban Mahmood is not totally safe either. West Streeting, as I say, came within 600 or so votes of being defeated. Jonathan Ashworth, who was going to be a member of the cabinet, had Labour.
Okay, well,
he was defeated. But look,
we don't have a response from those people. But Andrew Gilligan, thank you for your time. We are out of time because we have to make time for Patrick Christis. Patrick Christis tonight is coming up right after me. Patrick, what have you got coming up to?
Well, Matt, I am here with my wonderful live studio audience. Hello! And it is a full house tonight, standing room only, loads to go. Well, it turns out that our Chancellor is now a criminal, isn't she? She's broken the law. I'm sorry, but she's broken the law. Surely she has to go, doesn't she? Surely she has to go. Well, we got that as well. Also, I've got an exclusive for you from Madapasa. Does everyone remember Madapasa? Yeah? Well, he's been living it large behind bars, and we've got some live footage of him out there. He's been recording things on his phone, so we're going to play you all of that and much, much more. What's not to love? I'll see you and this wonderful lot in a second. Take care.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. The showers are set to continue over the weekend, but plenty of decent sunny spells in between, though it is going to remain rather breezy. And it's all thanks to low pressure, often situated to the north or northwest of the country, at times dragging in frontal systems, also plenty of isobars on that chart, so it is going to remain quite blustery. Some quite heavy downpours of rain at first across parts of Wales, southwest England. These will push northwards into parts of Scotland, northern England, also parts of East Anglia and southeast England. Some quite heavy downpours associated with these areas of rain, possibly even some hail and thunder and some very blustery winds too, but that does mean it should hold temperatures up, so a fairly mild night. Many towns and cities across the south remaining in the low double digits. Nevertheless, though, as we head towards the weekend, it's going to be a very unsettled start, particularly across Scotland. Heavy showers continuing, these merging into longer spells of rain. Still very blustery to start the day too. Perhaps a little brighter across Northern Ireland, though we can't rule out some showers around coastal areas. But many areas of the west across England and Wales will see these showers continue, perhaps a little brighter across parts of the southeast. Saturday, we will see quite a mix in conditions, but the longer spells of rain will eventually clear Scotland, so it will turn a little brighter, but once again we'll see a mix of showers as well, and still these could be heavy with some hail and thunder, and it's still going to be quite blustery, very blustery in fact around exposed coastal areas. Not feeling quite as mild as this afternoon, highs reaching around 15 degrees Celsius. Now for Sunday, once again, further showers, particularly across the southeast to start the day, and then more and more scooting into parts of Scotland as we progress through into Sunday. But you can see from the chart behind me, there's going to be a bit more sunshine around on Sunday, though once again, can't rule out some showers. Still fairly breezy, and that remains the theme as we head into next week, though things should start to feel that little bit milder.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
We're giving you the chance to win your entire Christmas this year paid for by us. First, we'll give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you a further £10,000 cash to spend on all your Christmas presents, even the tree. Christmas lunch, that's on us too, with £1,000 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB 17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 922.